The Narrow Way by Lillian 1945. There is a way, straight and narrow, leading to eternal life, to wholeness, peace, and blessedness. There is a way, wide and broad, leading to frustration, continuous problems, tribulations, death. Each must make the decision for himself, which way he shall take. Quotes, Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Matthew 7:13. When one practices the truth, he is living in a human state. One does not practice light when he sits in light. Human existence can never be healed of its human ills, its fears and tribulations, nor can anyone demonstrate over death. One leaves the human state by a living way, the way of life itself. Quotes, In Adam, human existence, all die. Even so, in Christ, spiritual vision and spiritual revelation shall all be made alive. 1 Corinthians 15:22. In the broad way, one identifies himself with everything human, even with human existence. He associates himself with human birth, human life, human sin, human belief, human reasoning, human will, human doctrines, human freedom, human footsteps, human fears, human health, wealth, and happiness, human needs, human systems of healing, human thinking, and he identifies himself as a human being, another besides the one. In the broad way, one practices the truth. He applies it to mind, to thinking, to conditions, to states and things in a human existence. His thoughts are about healing, about regeneration, achievement, attainment, demonstration, treatment. Never does he identify himself as the real itself, as the truth itself, but as someone practicing it, proving it, using it. He does not identify himself as perfect divine mind, but as an imperfect personal mind to be transmuted into the divine. He does not consider himself to be in the spiritual existence now, but to be en route to it. In the broad way, one follows leaders, teachers, masters. He is never the light and truth unto himself. His desire is to serve man, heal man, save the world. Altruistic ideas, but never can man save man or personality save personality. Even Jesus did not heal the world, nor can anyone else do so. Each must take and receive for himself. Each must be saved by the Christ light alone. Identified with human existence, one is ever in need of something. Never can he be immune from sin, sickness, limitation, or death. He may desire honesty, purity, perfection, but he cannot fulfill his desire while living as a human being in a human existence. He will need to leave the unreal and untrue for the real and the true if he is ever to find himself in the straight and narrow way. The real way is narrow because it admits none of the systems, methods, and speculations of the wide way. Human footsteps, human means, human mind and thinking are left outside. The narrow way is one of spiritual inspiration, spiritual illumination, spiritual revelation. It is one of changeless peace, happiness and abundance, unconditioned wholeness and bliss. It is the real itself, life, love, truth, the perfect self itself. The great blindness today, like a terrible tragedy, is that one travels along the wide way, not discerning that never will it take him to the narrow way of reality and truth. Though he demonstrates over this, applies the truth to that, or rises to lofty heights in his own estimation of works and demonstrations, he is ignorant of an unfamiliar he is ignorant of and unfamiliar with the imperial and authoritative words of Christ. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Matthew 7:22-23. It is not a question of time, of years spent in study and application, years of fight and struggle. Any instant, one may come to the narrow way, which concerns his heart and soul alone. The narrow way is the heart way. The wide way is the mind and thinking way. Remember this. You may train your mind and its thinking. You may heal your ills and make existence more comfortable for yourself. But you shall still remain on the steps as a human being in a human state. You shall still be imperfect, impure, insecure, outside of heaven, until you identify yourself with heaven, with the spiritual and the perfect as the only real existence there is. The broad way never leads to the narrow way, nor can it ever become the narrow way. No amount of progress, learning, spiritualization, practice, healing can ever transmute one into a spiritual being in the spiritual world. He must reorientate himself. He must be born again. He must plant his feet in the spiritual world now, as the only world or existence there is, the world of the Father, the realm of the real, the true, the absolute, and the eternal. None can see the narrow way without love. love that gives oneself wholly and completely to God, the perfect one, as his only mind, his only life, his only being, body and existence. The heart alone can fulfill this requirement of purity. One's need is never that of healing. His only need is inspiration, illumination, revelation, through himself, in himself, by himself. To this, none is entitled while he keeps his nose on the grindstone of metaphysical therapeutics. Illumination does not come by ways of the mental, but by love of the heart, love for the pure and the perfect, great enough to be all transcendent and pure enough to say, I do not want the wide way, but the narrow way. I want only the real, the true, and the divine, the life, self, being, body, world of spiritual existence. The vital question is not, how shall I apply the truth to this or that discord? The vital question is, how shall I be able to live in spiritual existence now, where I shall be free of the need of healing? The vital question is not how to obtain health and happiness in human existence, but how to find oneself in spiritual existence, where satisfaction and abundance abound. How can one find himself in spiritual existence? He must see the way. He must take the way. He must be the way unto himself. This is the meaning of the saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6. Identifying oneself with a human mind, one cannot be inspired or illumined. If he craves inspiration and illumination, then let him reorientate himself. Let him identify himself as spiritual being now, and let him drop all identification with the human and the mental. Draw nigh unto me. Your need is me, pure consciousness. I am your perfect everything. I am all you need. I am your real self, your Savior and your God. Refuse to believe that you are human, that you have a mind of your own which must be elevated, raised, or evangelized. Refuse such beliefs altogether. They all belong in the wide way. Refuse to battle with some other power. To do so is to identify yourself that much longer with human existence. Be what you really are, the one eternal being. Live in the only place there is, the spiritual existence. Identify yourself wholly with the straight and narrow way, the real and eternal. Do this, and you shall know and experience divine illumination. The mind has its eyes on results to be accomplished, demonstrations to be made, healings to take place, statements to be held in thought, work to be done, and battles to be fought. The heart has its eye on God, perfect being, perfect manifestation, perfect universe. The heart knows God to be one's only life, mind, being, manifestation forever, one's very self, here and now. The Absolute Way says never can you get out of a human existence through mental ways, methods and systems. And so long as you remain in this wide way, you will continue to be subject to failure and disappointment, for reality does not mix with human existence. Truth is not for use, for demonstration or for practice, as though there were something beside it. Truth is our perfection and our fulfillment always, to be loved, worshipped, and accepted as our very own. The day of attempting to work, use, or apply the truth came and has now passed. Come up higher. When you are called, answer, that you may be chosen. Quotes, my spirit shall not always strive with men. Genesis 6:3. The only way out of the human state, with its beliefs in the healing of sin and sickness, is to perceive with the heart that one is not in such a state and never has been. The heart can see that human existence is not a real state of being, but an assumptive state only, and one remains here until he wakens or identifies himself with spiritual existence and spiritual being alone. This is what is meant by being born again. The way of the Absolute places all those who desire it in the narrow way now, where they lay claim to spiritual being, spiritual body, and spiritual universe, and seize all other beliefs. Here they spontaneously come into possession of all things that the Father hath. John 16:15. The mental way is the hard way, the way of bleeding footsteps, the way of great tribulation, the way of endless toil, of falling and rising and falling again. Christ never taught mental science, mental healing, mental achievement. One of the greatest things to learn is that the mental way is not the way. The Christ way is the real way, the Absolute. It directs attention to the heart. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. The heart is where love is, and it requires love of the heart to see and to know God, reality, truth. Only love can take the narrow way. Said Christ, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is, like unto it, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Mark 12:30-31. Why fight longer and harder? Why bear any longer the heat and burden of the day? Matthew 20:12. What will labor and toil bring you? Nothing. The cry of the heart is this: Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. Matthew 9:34. If you have aches and pains and want them removed, then remove yourself from false identification with human mind, human thoughts, human will, human body, and human existence. Move into the spiritual existence where such words have no meaning. In one way alone can you move from the human, broad way into the spiritual, narrow way. It is the same way you take when you leave the foreign country of your dream for the room where you sleep. This way is called awakening. Awake thou that sleepest. Ephesians 5:14. In the state of duality, believing oneself sick in body and mind and in need of healing in body and mind, he cannot grasp ultimate things. Thus he attempts to apply the truth of the narrow way to the imperfections of the broad way, the way which Christ denounced, saying that it leads to destruction. To rise out of the imperfect teaching that one may be set free from sin and sickness, he must accept the spiritual revelation that we identify ourselves with the spiritual and absolute now, giving no thought whatever to the healing of any human being, human thinking, or human body. It is the truth that we shall know, not the false which we shall heal. This requires purity of heart and a love for the real that is strong enough to yield oneself completely, obediently, and fully to it. Quotes, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Matthew 4:10. If one wants to get rid of a shadow on the floor, let him remove the thing that is casting the shadow. No amount of scrubbing will affect it. Forms of sickness, sorrow, limitation are shadows which can be cancelled only by the reorientation of oneself. His abandonment of false identification with human mind, human body, human man, and human existence, and his identification of himself as spiritual being in spiritual existence. This identification releases him from the false belief or dream, and spontaneously he expresses the natural harmony of being. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, reality and truth, and all these things shall be added unto you. Matthew 6:33. People ask, do you mean for me to see my mind filled with right thoughts? Do you mean for me to see perfection in this body which I feed, bathe, and dress? The answer to both questions is no. Look to nothing that has the appearance of imperfection and duality. Look away from it. Look where Jesus looked when he lifted up his eyes. John 11:14. Only with spiritual vision can one see reality. Where did Jesus place his attention when he looked up to heaven? Luke 6:41. Where shall we look to see the perfect only? We shall look into pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is heaven. We shall see the real by the real, and know the divine by the divine. Find God in yourself as pure consciousness. Then away go both the dream and the dreamer. All the mind training in the world will never fit one to look into spiritual consciousness or to see the real by spiritual consciousness. This cannot be done until the heart is pure enough to see spiritually. In order for it to be pure, it must be humble. And in order for it to be humble, it must be unadulterated by beliefs in human minds and human existence, beliefs in subconscious mind and mortal mind. All are alike equipped to behold spiritually, but how many are willing to leave the ways of thought in order to see with the heart? Jesus said that many go in at the wide gate, and few there be that find the narrow way. Changing wrong thoughts into right thoughts, hateful thoughts into loving thoughts, sick thoughts into healthy thoughts, may prove elevating and beneficial for a time, but never will it take one out of human existence where tribulation is without end. Thus he shall continue to experience frustration, suffering, and fear so long as his false identification lasts. Look unto me, Isaiah 45:20. Does this me refer to personal mind or body? Who is this me? It is your perfect, immaculate self, mind and being, which is unrelated to what you call your human self, human mind and human being. It is your perfect, immaculate body, which is unrelated to the one you feed, bathe and dress. What will stop false beliefs, wrong thoughts, sinful actions? Your identification as divine mind, divine life, divine being, none else. Where is light which will swallow up darkness? Where is wholeness, harmony, and blessedness which one craves? They are within us, within our power to see, accept, believe, take, love, and be as the all in all. Physician, heal thyself. Luke 4:23. Free yourself by the Christ light, true identification, leaving the false for the true, the broad way for the way that is narrow and straight. The time is now at hand when we shall experience the mighty truth in the promise, He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. John 11:25-26. Sin brings suffering, sorrow, and death. One would consider it sinful to steal from another. But does he consider it a sin to be sick and in need of healing? To be in want? To be unhappy or grieved? Generally, no. Rather does he set about to find someone or something to take away his suffering or limitation in a physical or mental way. Let one look to himself and let him consider his own state of false belief. Let him know that when he believes falsely, he is living in disobedience to his own being, God, accepting sinful thoughts about the self, about body and world, instead of turning from these beliefs to reality itself, the universe of pure consciousness. What is sin but acceptance of false beliefs and false identification? Only through true belief and true identification can sin be removed. True belief and true identification is Christ, the light of the world. One speaks of bones stiff and joints fixed. How is he to lose such belief? He is not to treat mind, body, thoughts, or disease, nor to apply reality to unreality. He is to know such false belief to be a sin against his pure and perfect selfhood. Let him ask himself if he wants to be sinful. From his heart, he will hear the right answer. When one is willing to confess his sin and turn from it, and when his love for the perfect is pure and strong enough, it can absorb the false belief then and there. When we love the real and the true as our very own, then our light is great and mighty enough to completely fill us, so that there is no darkness in us. This is the way of the Absolute. Reader, shall you be one to take this way? It is a sin to believe that life can be sick, weak, discordant. Said the Christ, if I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin, but now they have no cloak for their sin. John 15:22. If the message of the Absolute had not come, transcending that of metaphysics, we would have continued reconditioning minds and thoughts, serving other gods, not finding the one God to be within us always. Without the revelation that we are truth itself, not students of it, we are life itself, not expressions of it, one would still be looking to another God, obeying personalities, not seeing that everyone must have revelation for himself. In fact, this is his only way to life everlasting. There is no excuse now for anyone. If he remains longer on the broad way which leads to destruction, instead of identifying himself spontaneously with the way which leads unto life, he is denying his own selfhood. Quotes, if we deny him, he will also deny us. 2 Timothy 2:12. If one refuses to identify himself with his real being and real existence, after he has been shown the great necessity that he do so, he shall be denied the freedom, joy, and glory of spiritual life and blessedness. No one can breathe for another, eat or drink for another. Likewise, each shall need to make his own departure from false identification and false beliefs. Each shall need to confess his sin and spontaneously identify himself as the divine alone, the perfect alone, the self which is the all and the alone of everyone. changing from one form of mental treatment to another while still remaining in the belief that one is an individual consciousness living in a human existence is like changing horses in midstream. The one way is to get out of the imperfect belief into the perfect understanding, out of the false into the true, out of mortal beliefs into everlasting life itself, out of man into God. In the mental way, one can declare that he is a perfect and spiritual idea, but he cannot know that he is life itself. This immaculate concept comes to him only when he loves the real and the absolute more than all else. There is no mental way to the real. The only way to the real is by the heart's acceptance of the real and the perfect as his only existence and his abandonment of all other beliefs. The only way to the real is by being the real. The only way to see, hear, and feel reality in the spiritual world is to love and accept this reality as our very own. Regardless what your problem seems to be, it exists in your belief that you are a man, a personality, or an individual living in a human existence. No one should expect or hope to live in a human existence and enjoy the fullness and completeness of spiritual existence. It is an utter impossibility. All efforts to apply the truth are based upon the assumption state of human existence, the assumptive state of human existence. The sooner that one discovers that never can he express the truth from the state of the untrue or manifest the real from the state of the unreal, the sooner will he be ready to accept the message of the Absolute in its beauty, purity, and reality. How shall I pay my legitimate debts? How shall I solve this or heal that? There is but one answer to all such queries. It is this: abandon the belief that you are a man living in a human existence. Stop all identification with the human. Live in spiritual existence. Be spiritual being. Think as divine mind now. Love as divine love now. Abide in and as the perfect now. Not until the prodigal left the far country did he find himself in the Father's house, and not until we depart from the human by a new and living way, the way of true identification, do we find ourselves in spiritual existence, where the former things are passed away. Revelation 21:4. Therefore, the efforts to demonstrate, to apply, to utilize, to handle, to overcome, to heal, must be relegated to the past if one would have and enjoy the abundance, wholeness, harmony, and effulgence of the real, the true, and the divine. The absolute way is the Christ way. It is I am. It is not I will be when I heal or when I overcome. The words I am signify the present tense. Be alone with your own being, God, long enough for you to consider this vitally momentous question. Henceforth, which way shall I take, the broad or the narrow? Henceforth, with whom shall I identify myself? With the imperfect or with the perfect? The human or the divine? The student or the truth? The idea or divine mind? The reflection or the original? The individual or the one? Man or God? Seek nothing in a human existence. Live and abide in the spiritual. Here you have everything. You find everything. Here you are not in need of a human companion, a material home, or physical harmony. You have spiritual companions, spiritual home, spiritual harmony, spiritual joy, peace, and abundance. When you accept this way, when you love and abide in this way, you are in the Christ way, the new and living way, the absolute way. Finally, all needs shall be cancelled and shall be absorbed in one way alone, the reorientation of oneself from the false belief that he lives in a human existence to the spiritual realization that he lives in spiritual existence, and from the false belief that he is another beside the one to the spiritual realization that he is the one alone. End of book, The Narrow Way.